and we're done with Trevor for now. So the fact that politics was to remain on a local scale meant that no hegemonic power could take over. There was no one ever from afar who had power over you. You had power in your city. Maybe that's the reason that's being offered there. Interesting. Now that segues us into this text here, the ancient city, because he mentions the law and religion were one and the same. So now let's get a bit about the insane credulousness of this ancient society. This is The Ancient City, a classic study of the religious and civil institutions of ancient Greece and Rome, by Fustel de Coulanges, F-U-S-T-E-L-D-E-C-O-U-L-A-N-G-E-S. This was published in 1864, and we have here an updated version in 1873. Alright, so we're going to skip way down to page 215, and this is about the Roman and the Athenian in their city first, and then about how great the city was compared to the citizen, essentially. The fear of the gods was not a sentiment peculiar to the Roman. It also reigned in the heart of the Greek. Now, if we were studying Rome, I would have done the pages before this on Rome, but we're doing Greece. These peoples, originally established by religion and elevated by it, long preserved the marks of their first education. We know the scruples of the Spartan, who never commenced an expedition before the full moon, who was continually sacrificing victims to know whether he ought to fight, and who renounced the best planned and most necessary enterprises because a bad presage frightened him. The Athenian was not less scrupulous. An Athenian army never set out on a campaign before the 7th day of the month, and when a fleet set sail on an expedition, great care was taken to regild the statue of Pallas. Xenophon declares that the Athenians had more religious festivals than any other Greek people. Quote, "How many victims offered to the gods," says Aristophanes. "How many temples, how many statues, how many sacred processions. At every moment of the year we see religious feasts and crowned victims." End quote. The city of Athens and its territory are covered with temples and chapels. Some are for the city worship, others for the tribes and demes, and still others for family worship. Every house is itself a temple, and in every field there is a sacred tome. The Athenian, whom we picture to ourselves as so inconstant, so capricious, such a free thinker, has on the contrary a singular respect for ancient traditions and ancient rites. Now I pause for just a second there. He says the Athenian, who we picture to ourselves as blah 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 blah, because people in the 1800s had a picture of the Athenian. They had all kinds of stories they knew about them. Continuing, so this guy basically writes this to kind of deride the ancient city-state a little bit. He is sort of saying some bad stuff about the ancient city-state. The Athenian's principal religion, that which secures his most fervent devotion, is the worship of ancestors and heroes. He worships the dead and fears them. One of his laws obliges him to offer them yearly the first fruits of his harvest. Another forbids him to pronounce a single word that can call down their anger. There's a law against calling down the anger of dead people on you. If a priest introduces the slightest innovation into the worship, he is punished with death. The strangest rites are observed from age to age. One day in the year, the Athenians offer a sacrifice in honor of Ariadne, A-R-I-A-D-N-E, and because it was said that the beloved of Theseus died in childbirth, they are compelled to imitate the cries and movements of a woman in travail. They celebrate another festival called Ostrophoria, which is a sort of pantomime representing the return of Theseus to Attica. They crown the wand of a herald, because Theseus' herald crowned his staff. They utter a certain cry which they suppose the herald uttered, and a procession is formed, and each wears the costume that was fashioned in Theseus' time. What a weird holiday. On another day the Athenians did not fail to boil vegetables in a pot of a certain kind. This was a rite, the origin of which was lost in dim antiquity, and of which no one knew the significance, but which was piously renewed each year. The Athenian, like the Roman, had unlucky days. On these days no marriage took place, no enterprise was begun, no assembly was held, and justice was not administered. The 18th and 19th day of every month was employed in purification. The Athenian offered sacrifices for the harvests, for the return of rain, and for the return of fair weather. He offered them to cure sickness and to drive away famine or pestilence. Athens has its collection of ancient oracles, as Rome has her Sibylline books, Sibylline books. Athens supports in the Prytaneum men who foretell the future. In her streets we meet at every step soothsayers, priests, and interpreters of dreams. The Athenian believes in portents. Sneezing or ringing in the ears arrests him in an enterprise. He never goes on shipboard without taking the auspices. I think in medieval times that you had to cover your mouth when you sneezed or your soul could fly out. The Athenians must have had something even crazy as that. Before marrying, he does not fail to consult the flight of birds. Watch when birds fly away and see what that tells you, because that can tell you stuff. The assembly of the people disperses as soon as anyone declares that there has appeared in the heavens an ill-boding sign. So a whole bunch of people are gathered talking about law or whatever, and someone says, look, a cloud that looks like a bad omen or whatever. And everyone just disperses, there's not a question. If a sacrifice has been disturbed by the announcement of bad news, it must be recommenced. The Athenian hardly commences a sentence without first invoking good fortune. He puts the same words at the head of all his decrees. On the speaker's stand, the orator prefers to commence with an invocation to the gods and heroes who inhabit the country. So it's like a multiculturalist religion. Everywhere you go, it's the gods in this area rule this area. There's no god that made everything that's everywhere. Nicias belongs to a great and rich family. We'll take a quick look at this guy, Nicias. It talks quite a bit about him, but we're just going to skip down. He was appointed a general. He commanded an expedition against Corinth, and it's showing how credulous this guy was. They're on their way back to Athens. He was successful, and he realizes 2 of his soldiers may have been left on the battlefield dead, and he makes the whole fleet stop. He sends a herald back to the Corinthians. Then later on, different situation, same general. Quote, the Athenian people are deliberating upon the Sicilian expedition. Should they invade Sicily or not? Nicias ascends the speaker's stand and declares that his priests and soothsayers announce prestiges which are opposed to the expedition. Alcibiades, it is true, has other diviners who interpret the oracles in a contrary sense, and the people are undecided. Oh, so now everybody's in a hustle-bustle. They've got 2 religious omens. I've got the gods say this to me, the gods say this to me. And so everyone's, oh, I don't know, should we go or not? Men come in suddenly, who've just arrived from Egypt. Their boats just got in. And they have consulted the god Ammon, A-M-M-O-N, who is beginning to be quite the fashion. And they report this oracle from him. The Athenians will capture all the Syracusans. The people immediately decide for war. Oh! If Ammon says so, let's go! Nicias, much against his will, commands the expedition. So he's the general. He says it's had ill forebodings. He says, my omens say it's bad. We shouldn't go. It's not a good